So imagine a worldwide, a global virtual reality universe. Anyone, anywhere in the world can plug into it, and we can connect, we can share, we can communicate, and we can travel. And using an avatar, you can actually meet with someone, talk to them, have a conversation with them. This is pretty much the premise of Ready Player One, the book, and now a major Hollywood movie from Steven Spielberg, the book written by Ernest Cline. And it is a brilliant, brilliant book, and not a bad movie. So we're gonna talk about that. This is not intended to be a movie review or book review, but a discussion of these is going to be impossible without delving into what we think of the book and the movie. So I've gathered with me two of my mates. We're at a Stir Kinnikor, and we were actually hoping that it would be that it would be busy, that it would be filled with patrons milling around as we recorded this. But as it turns out, even though it's a half-price Tuesday, there's not too many people here, and maybe we'll have a conversation about that in a minute. But I've gathered two of my mates. We play poker together, and outside of that, there's no real qualifications for them to be here. But we're all big fans of the book. Why are we fans about it? I mean, we've spent quite a bit of time talking about it, getting excited about it. But why? Why are we big fans of this?
Well, for me, really, I enjoy movies that let you escape. I don't like deep, heavy movies. I want to go to a world, do some stuff, and then come back to reality. And this book and this movie is a little bit about that, but in a big way, right? So you plug in to something, escape, and these people are escaping kind of their everyday life on an everyday basis. We don't give too much away, or do we? I don't know.
No, I think there's going to be a few spoilers. I thought about that, and I don't know how we do this without. I mean, we're going to try not to, but whatever we say, go read the book and see the movie. But I don't think we can shy away from it too much.
Yeah. No, I think watch the movie, read the book.
Yeah, right? Yeah, absolutely. This is that one case where it's definitely watch the movie, then read the book.
Okay, well, we'll come to that in a moment.
I think
but
on your question around it, I think what's so appealing to me around it is we get these cycles and trends where movies and books follow patterns. You get the whole world's going to be destroyed by a meteor, and then you get four
apocalypse
books,
movies.
Exactly right. And we're currently in that cycle of exactly right. And now the cycle is dystopian worlds.
Yes.
Right? Every second book is a
but with
dystopian world.
specifically with technology
Absolutely.
that we have today.
And
yeah.
I think for me, where the appeal around this storyline is that it does that, but it drags me back to my childhood. So all of the references in it are as a kid growing up in the 80s, and the games that we played, and the books we read, and the music we listened to, and the movies you watched, and I think that's what's so appealing is that it has a real tie-in. I guess all of us being fairly not technically challenged, we can see this world of tech, but it has that personal hook back to something I can associate with on an everyday basis.
I think from a sheer, and I don't know what Ernest Cline's thought was when he was writing the book, but I thought the entire premise was brilliant for a couple of reasons. One, it ties into the whole technology, gaming, the whole gaming culture that exists, which is fabulous for younger people, but then hooked it back to 80s culture, which hooks people of our age. And I guess for clarity, if you haven't seen or haven't read the book, it's set in 2045, and the guy who develops this thing called the OASIS, which is a virtual reality world where you actually you literally strap into it. You got the goggles and you got a suit, so you can kind of feel physical experience of what you do inside the OASIS, and you can spend your life in it. But there's a lot of tie back to the 80s. The founder, the guy who started the OASIS, was born in 1972, James Halliday, and I got to say that was the year I was born, and probably the similarities, well, hopefully end there. But
but being worth $500 billion.
Yeah, I know.
I would take that.
I would trade being this good looking for being a geek and $500 billion.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd go. I'd take that deal.
But I think there's even more scenarios that we see linking where we are today. If you think about the reference that the two largest companies or the two largest corporations in the story are both tech businesses, right? The one is the OASIS, and the one that builds stuff for the OASIS. right? But they are the two biggest companies. And if you look at the
So one of them's Samsung's, one of them's Apple. We don't know.
but absolutely, one of them is
Google.
one of them's Facebook, one of them's Google,
Alphabet.
one of them's Amazon.
Yes.
You know, and I think it's that whole kind of thing. You know, the world of the past, where the big companies were the industrial giants, has kind of moved on, and that big machine is the tech world. You know, and that sort of pulls through in the movie. If you look at it, you don't see any reference to, you know, large industrial type corporates. You know, it's all tech.
Well, let's talk for a moment about the book and the movie. Now, the first thing interesting to note is that all three of us did not read the book. It was all audio. And I don't know.
Who's got time to read? I mean,
No,
let's
no,
be
ex-
honest.
Who's got time to listen?
Were
4
you?
days.
Yeah, exactly. No,
I'm
listen.
gonna drive somewhere. I'll be back.
Yeah, for 4 days.
But okay, where did you listen to it? Were you mostly driving?
Mostly
or?
driving.
Yeah.
But it's one of those books that hooked me so bad that I was like, I'm going to bed now. Maybe I can squeeze in another half hour,
Yes.
right? And
2
so
hours
I'm,
later.
I'm listening to this thing in bed now.
Well,
and,
we've moved from just one more chapter to just 10 minutes.
Absolutely.
10 minutes.
Exactly.
Okay, another 10, another 15 minutes.
yeah.
So that's interesting. And I've never really been a fan of audiobooks until to the point you made, where you have there's so much time you waste driving, and that's what hooked me on audio. Is, you know, you sit in the car, and really the dreck that's on the radio these days, you know, you hop from one channel to the next. It's awful. So podcasts and audiobooks were a lifesaver, a revelation. And you learn. It's fascinating. It's fantastic. So that's the first interesting thing. None of us read it. We listened to it.
Absolutely, and I mean, it became a listen to it everywhere. I mean, it started off as a listen while I'm driving.
Yes.
Then it
You're
was
talking about this book in
this book,
particular.
no, this
Absolutely,
book
yeah.
specifically, and then it became listen to it just before I go to sleep. Then listen to it while I'm on the couch. Then just listen to it.
So I
You know,
listened
and
to
was
it.
just
I listened to it last year,
Yeah.
and then of course you listened to it early this year.
Absolutely.
And then you were like, you have to get this book. You have to read this book. And then I remembered that the movie's coming, so I quickly did a re-listen just before the movie and I enjoyed it.
Is
just
it?
as
Were
much.
you just
thoroughly? It was just fun. It was also the same thing. I was going for a little workout or a little run around the neighborhood, and I was like, instead of my music, I'm going to listen.
Oh,
we're going to listen to
fantastic.
this book.
a colleague of mine used the term for the audiobook as popcorn. It's the thing he couldn't put it down.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was exactly that. It was
It
just
is
that engaging.
such it's a very well told story, and then of course, you know, we're how old are you, Andrew?
42.
Okay, so and you've just hit 40,
That's
right?
it.
Okay, so we're all of a certain age, and so the 80s stuff and the pop culture stuff was fantastic, and it takes you right back to it, but over and above that, it's just a great story about. I mean, the theme is classic. You know, there's
Always.
you know,
There's
there's
a good guy, there's a bad guy.
there's a
love
challenge.
story.
There's good people, bad people, and you know, the young hero and the love story, etc. And then, okay, the movie's coming out, and as soon as I heard that the movie's coming, I was going, okay, this is. I wasn't excited. I got to tell you, you know, we've all learnt our lessons with that. But then you find out Steven Spielberg's at the helm, and you go,
he could
this,
get it right.
this dude knows how to do things. So let's for a moment. And deliberately now, all of us have watched the movie. We didn't watch it together. We've watched it separately, and we have deliberately not spoken about it.
Yeah.
We were kind of saving it for this episode.
Yes.
So, who wants to go first?
go
About
first.
you go first. You gave off the worst vibe about it, but so you start.
Well, look, I think I've said everything that needs to be said about
Yes.
the movie.
Yeah.
So quite simply, there's two ways that I look at it. The one is as a movie, just purely as a movie with the story, and the other is a movie with the story based on this book.
Okay.
Quite frankly, as a movie, I'd give it kind of an average. Right? There's so much they could have done. Right? There's so much if you're thinking about the story, and it's hard because I know the backstory to it. But just looking at it, it's cool. It's got some great, but it's a lot of sort of filler. You know, they're bringing in stuff that is going to tie you back to other movies, and that's part of it. But I think more could have been done. If I look at it as a book or a movie based on the book, it's just utterly disappointing.
Okay.
It's I couldn't understand. There's things that they've changed, and I don't understand the need for the change. It just didn't live up to any kind of expectation.
So out of 10.
0.
No,
Okay,
come
okay,
on.
okay,
No, jeez.
okay, a 1.
Oh, oh, my
No,
word.
absolutely.
No, that's brutal, Andrew.
Based,
Okay,
based
well
on
then.
the movie of a movie of that book.
Okay, fair. Okay.
As
Much.
I also was like, the movie kind of disappointed me at first, but then I thought about it a little bit and I said, well, I think you don't really want a replica. You don't want the same thing. You actually want a bit of artistic license, and maybe you want, because it could also be looked at two adventures. The first adventure, reading the book, was fantastic, and reliving all those stories and all those games and all those movies in the book, I think that's had a lot to do with it. It's just another story, you felt like you were in the moment, right? Wherever the character was, you were there with him. So the movie lost a lot of that, I think. So then another thought in my head was like, wow, 3 keys, 3 movies. Imagine that, right? Now you've got space and time for all that stuff, because a lot of them fine details were missing.
Yes.
Some of them were alluded to in the movie, but you wouldn't have understood them unless you've read the book. The gauntlets, for example.
Yes.
They flashed on screen, and like, unless you've read the book or listened to the book like we did, you probably didn't understand what that or why that was important, etc. So, but I would give it as a movie, and imagining I hadn't read the book or listened to the book, I'd probably give it like a 7, because it was a great adventure. It did take me away.
Look, I thought it was. If you haven't seen the movie, it's a brilliant movie.
If you haven't seen the
Sorry, if you haven't listened or read the book, it's a brilliant movie. If you've read the book, it's good, maybe even very good. I did enjoy it, and it has. Did you watch it on IMAX or?
I did.
IMAX 3D.
IMAX 3D.
Okay, I watched it on IMAX 3D, so we have a similar view.
Yeah, I just watched it.
We won't talk about how Andrew watched it, but
Andrew just watched it.
I don't think you got the full cinematic
For
experience.
sure, but I think for me the big part is that I was absolutely in love with the book. The book for me is a book on the list of sort of a top 10 book kind of idea.
Well, I
kind of
guess
thing for me, and it was just so disappointing, and maybe. For me, I struggled with the idea of separating the concept of saying, if this is just a movie, but it's not just a movie.
Yeah, I know.
And sort of I think about that with other great books that were made into movies, right, that were really long. Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Those movies were phenomenal, right? And the book enhanced that. So, that it can be achieved.
Well, I guess there were certain things that disappointed me. The any movie that is made, any book that's adapted by Hollywood has the Hollywood moments that, if you take a little love story, it becomes like, in a Hollywood movie. And there was a scene at the end where it was like, oh, this is what we're doing with the OASIS now. And I was like, really? Come on, that's never going to happen. Anyway, whatever. But so there were a couple of, but it wasn't too bad. It could have been far worse.
Okay, I'll give it a 2.5.
We've cranked him up to
Okay, can we? Okay, one of the things that I did enjoy, right? And I thought actually he was pretty good in the movie was IROC. When you think of IROC in the book, you think pretty much complete total
douchebag. Yeah.
But in the book, in the movie, he was quite a pleasant douchebag. He was okay. It was quite important.
From a comedic point of view, he was the thread, wasn't he? He was brilliant that way.
Exactly. So I think he suited the role, and what they did in the movie was great.
I could see what they were trying to do in the movie with it, because it would have been hard to get across the way it was in the book without sort of significant amount of time, because you need to build that up, and that was hard.
That is very hard. Which, your point, you said 3 keys, 3 movies.
Yeah.
Isn't there an argument though for, there was a time where you had movies and you had TV, and movies was all the glitz and glamour, and if you couldn't make it in Hollywood or in movies, you were relegated to television, and it was the ugly stepsister of entertainment. Whereas, with the advent of Netflix, that has changed. You've had, before his fall from grace, you had Kevin Spacey with House of Cards, which I think was what catapulted this whole idea of the blockbuster series.
Yeah.
All episodes, jam it out, and we can binge watch. And the production value in that was fantastic. And there have been superb series, Stranger Things. We could name a bunch of them, which are just
actors.
Really.
That was
A-list
Exactly.
actors.
So they're coming out of Hollywood.
Westworld, right?
Yep.
It is Westworld.
Yeah.
With Anthony Hopkins. Come on.
Anthony Hopkins, Ed Harris. There's like
But if
proper
you think about
people
it,
there.
in that, it was a thought that I had earlier with it, was instead of a movie, would have been a series.
Wouldn't that have been?
Because
I would have enjoyed that, because
phenomenal.
now you could make it, even if you just made it 10 episodes, which kind of seems
For
to
sure.
be a thing these
Yeah.
days. 1 hour per episode, 10 hours.
Well-
I mean, the book is 15 hours.
Yeah.
A 10-hour series, you could have done.
No,
I think it would have been
Brilliant.
power.
And I mean, if you think about that comparatively,
Yeah.
if we pick on something that has been done that way, look at something like Game of Thrones.
Yes.
Right? Now, if Game of Thrones was made into a movie, I think it would have been pretty awful. Because it
Yeah.
would have been really
No,
hard
you would never
to
gotten
achieve
that-
that kind
No,
of
that-
richness and depth.
yeah.
And you
that
would have
they've
never got
got.
to hate the villain, right?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
Every Game of Thrones,
And-
you get to hate one of those villains. And then the amazing thing is, the next season, I mean, you can't
Yeah, he's not
possibly
so bad,
hate
actually.
anyone more
Yeah.
until the guy that just, and then you hate the new guy even more, right?
Absolutely, it's literally a. You can't hate anybody else more. And somebody says, "Yeah, hold my beer." and I think that could have worked really well in this type of thing, because you could even, you can expand on that universe, and it would have become more than just this storyline. I mean, when you sit at the end of the book and you start thinking about it, the number of storylines that can continue inside this, almost that sort of fan world, is just.
Well, that's the beauty of this OASIS, right? It's not a simulation. Well, it's a human-driven simulation, right?
absolutely.
There's non-playing characters. There's a bit of
Yeah.
AI, strong AI, but it's up to you as the player or as the avatar to do whatever you want, right? The end as well, which I think to some extent is the dream of a lot of gamers.
Well, what I've loved about what I loved about the book, and I think what captured me, I call myself a gamer, which is kind of funny because I play one game, but I play it a lot, and
Oh, well, then that counts.
And you don't mean poker.
but as I was reading the book, and I took some time. I was like, okay, so I'm sitting in front of the TV and I'm gaming, and I'm starting to imagine that game as a virtual reality world, where it's not just you come to the TV and play the game. You're in there, you're playing, it's whatever, and then you leave, but you're still in the world, and then you can go and do your trades for all the trading that goes on and the discussion. That I went, that would be absolutely incredible. And the gaming community is amazing, because if you are a gamer and you play online games, you meet people, and that's kind of interesting.
People like iRock.
Yeah. Well, listen, my challenge as a man in his 40s is, every time some players like, hey, should we team up? I'm going, just please don't be 13. Please don't be 13. and so you team up and you connect and you speak to each other. It's like, hi. And I'm like, I gotta go. Bye. But nonetheless, there is that interaction, and you make friends. And to have that in a more immersive experience, I think would be incredible. So that's what I enjoyed. It was like trying to picture myself in that environment and how I would interact and how I would live my life as I'm living it now, but virtual. And
But that community thing that you mentioned is quite interesting to me, because especially when it comes to open source, and I mean, as a bit of a hobby, I've got a 3D printer, and it's been quite a steep learning curve. But there's a community around 3D printing and around the Marlin software that it runs, or the firmware that it runs, and it's all open source. And it's amazing to see how friendly and how open to assistance these communities are. And I would assume that gaming, to a large extent, is the same. You've got this common goal, common focus, whatever, this common interest, gaming or killing the other guy, or whatever the hell it is. And there's this automatic kind of, you're okay, right? You don't have to prove yourself. There's no going through any sort of obstacle to see you're worthy or whatever. You're here, I'm here, you're into this, we're into this, and it's for me, that's quite amazing.
Well, unless you're a noob.
listen, whoever you are, you're a noob to somebody. Yeah.
That's exactly.
Okay, well, now let's talk about where this is. I think in the OASIS in the book, the OASIS went online at around 2023. I think that was
25 or
23, 25, maybe as late as 26.
Sure.
So let's assume it's 2026. The OASIS, this global virtual reality universe, which is 8 years from now.
Correct.
If we look at where we are with tech. Okay, well, the first question is something like the OASIS possible?
Yes.
Okay.
No doubt.
Okay, so and it
It's
wouldn't be
purely-
that hard.
It's
I mean,
purely a matter of time.
and virtual reality is coming along. Oh, listen, on that
beyond
point, by the
shadow
way,
of doubt.
I don't know how much VR stuff you've done. I haven't done a hell of a lot, but I was at a show. In fact, it was the Dell EMC Forum a couple of weeks ago, where they had a little VR station. And the thing was, you put the thing on you, and you get into a lift, and the lift goes up to the top floor of this massive building, and the lift opens, and you walk out on a plank, and then you have to jump off the plank, and you see the ground rushing up at you. what it took to override my brain, because I'm telling myself, you're in a hall.
Sure.
This is completely okay, but in this VR world, you're standing on this plank with an abyss below you. To tell yourself to take that next step, it was incredibly hard. And in fact, the only way I could finally do it is I had to close my eyes, which is
And not
bizarre.
actually watch it.
So I closed my eyes and took a step forward, and then opened my eyes as I'm falling to the ground. So we are there, and VR is kind of awkward and weird right now. And it's novelty. It's sort of in the
I
Google.
think it's difficult to monetize. That's where the problem is.
But I don't think that's where the starting point should be. If you
No,
think
no,
about
fair
it,
enough,
if you
but
think
I mean,
about it,
there's-
sort of tech is tech needs to be there for the sake of tech. And I mean, I'll use the example. Let's pick on something like a Facebook, right? Or let's pick on something like a Google, which are probably now two of the biggest monetized techs in the world. When they started, they were nothing. There was no money in it. It was tech to do something different.
But I think,
And-
despite, I mean, but it's advancing anyway, and
No,
as
100%.
I understand it,
No, beyond a
it's
shadow of a doubt.
advancing
No, no,
at
no,
shadow of a
quite a
doubt.
rapid rate. But it's an interesting question. So, none of us are in. I mean, we're all in the tech industry in
sure.
some way, fashion, or form. But I don't think any of us are massive boffins on.
Not in hardware,
but what do you think stands between us and the OASIS? 8 years from now, what is it? Just refinement and iteration, or is it massive, like a massive innovation that's required?
So I think the actual timeline is very hard to pin down.
Yes.
Right, to say 8 years for sure, but I was reading something earlier. Could have been today, could have been sometime this week, and one of the points that came up in it was the timeline for flight. Right. Between the first flight and putting a man on the moon was less than 70 years. Now, the first flight was 120 foot. Right?
A minute and 6 seconds or something.
But
yeah.
exactly, right? Yeah. To then go from that in less than 70 years with next to zero tech. Right?
Well,
if
listen,
you think about where we were from a technology
Yeah.
perspective, to put somebody on the moon in 1969, was it 69? Yeah. Right? Is an incredible step. And this might seem sort of like completely sort of off field, but the whole point here is that those steps that we make, if we think about where we move in terms of how that technology develops.
Well, it's the
where
classic
are
thing.
now.
We tend to think linearly rather than
until you look back.
exponentially.
But it's
Yeah.
actually exponential. And also, I think the advancements in artificial intelligence, that's the stuff that's really going to push this. I mean, especially once they master video.
Yes.
I mean, I read an article the other day about some guy that's written quite an interesting algorithm, and it's open source, and it basically will put you into a video. It'll put your face into the video, and you can do, you
Really?
can become anyone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I think that's, if you think about it, that's what most of Ready Player One
Yes.
is to some extent.
Well, if you think about it, if you've ever watched any of guys like to film their videos from playing Sims, right? You know the game
Yes.
The Sims?
Yes.
So when The Sims first started out, you were this sort of omnipresent, sort of third-person view, and you moved them around and created rooms and got them to do stuff, and that was kind of the universe, right? But it's now evolved to its first-person view.
Okay, so you're in there.
So they
Okay.
set up an event. Somebody will create an event in the sim world, and Sims go to it.
Oh, okay. So is it online?
Yeah, completely.
Online. Okay.
Oh,
So
yeah.
completely.
Fully online,
Yeah.
sorry,
And
I
so-
did play The Sims,
Yeah,
but
no,
I
no,
played The
but
Sims like
back
10
in the
years
day,
ago, 12
exactly,
years
right?
ago.
Back in the day when it was you built a house, and if you saved up enough money, you
my
put a swimming pool in, right? That kind
Yeah,
of junk.
yeah.
It's evolved to this whole sort of world.
But that's
and
exactly
universe.
what it is. I mean, you're
But-
just expanding
but now,
on.
you look at the video out of it now, it's purely a matter of graphics. That's all it is. The difference between Ready Player One and where The Sims is at is simply a matter of how refined the graphics.
So
in my opinion.
the next question then is, okay, so neither of us doubt that technologically it's going to be possible, and we're probably even closer than we think. The next question then is, just because we can, should we?
Yes.
Oh, jeez.
And again, why? I mean, in the book, more so in the book. Well, in the movie they try and kind of Hollywoodize it a little bit, but in the book it makes the point. You're never sure if it's a good thing or a bad thing, which is the truth about anything. You think about the internet. The internet's fantastic, but it's got its dark arts, dark sciences, and if we were given the choice to do it all over again, I have no doubt the internet would come to pass. So,
Absolutely.
but
But it's not fair to blame the internet, right, or the tech, because at the end of the day, it's still humans.
Yeah,
right?
exactly that.
So,
but is it a good thing? And now we start to sound like our parents, because you go, is it a good thing for our kids to be hooked into a VR world?
So
You've got a teenage. I mean, in the book, the guy goes to school. That's how he goes to school. He never leaves. He lives in effectively a slum, and he's found an old abandoned van, and he sits in there, and he's there for 8 hours going to school.
So I've made the argument for some time that what the trick we're missing in South African education, we say that we have a challenge with enough highly skilled educators. Right? So why don't we take the 100 highly skilled educators we get and use the digital world to educate everybody? Right? We don't need 1,000, I don't know, pick the brightest person you know in maths or science, right? We don't need thousands of them. We just need one, right? And we need the ability to get that message across to the 700,000 students in school. So that's why the internet is a good thing. That's why the ability to plug into a world somewhere is a good thing. Personally, something like the OASIS is probably more healthy for you than the current world. The coolest piece of tech for me in the movie and the book is that omnidirectional
Treadmill. Oh no, that was very groovy. That was
so you know. And I
in
mean,
fact, that was an innovation of the movie, right?
Yeah,
I mean, because in
I
the
thought
book
that was very cool.
in the book you sit on your ass and you travel the world, whereas this thing you kind of
Absolutely, and
have
you
to
just run,
you
and
have to
then suddenly
physically
run this
walk.
way,
Yeah.
and it just and I thought that was incredible. Think about it. You could use that as a fitness mechanism. Say you want to spend the next 8 hours in the OASIS. Run for 45. Run for 45 to charge the battery. You know, I don't know, something like that.
No, and listen, even later in the book, though, there were sort of fitness programs you could plug
Yes,
into
absolutely.
that actually incentivized you to get healthier and do things and all
Which
of that.
we started doing already.
Yeah.
We have wearable devices,
and we're, I
we
mean,
take
all of
our
us
step,
are wearing
yeah,
the
1,
smartwatches,
2,
and
3.
we're obsessing about our steps.
Absolutely, because we can get a free cappuccino.
Yeah. With 3 sugars. Yeah. Okay, so
that's your personal demon.
all right, so my view is absolutely, and it's also a stupid question to ask. Should we do it? The reality is, I think it's a certainty. It's going to happen.
I don't think it's a choice.
Yeah,
It'll happen either way.
Correct, and it's sort of like AI. You know, you've got some very smart people who are saying, well, we need to put on the brakes with AI, and it's kind of too late. We just need to be smart about how we deal with that and have proper conversations about it. But I mean, this is attached to the same argument about there is immense value in doing it, in having a global this global VR
Absolutely,
thing.
I like to look back at it once again, and I look back at things and I say, should we have done the motor car?
Yeah.
Right? Should we have?
Listen, maybe we shouldn't have done any of it. Maybe we should still be grunting our way through the fields hunting food.
it could be cheesy, right? With great power comes great,
Great
responsibility.
responsibility, absolutely.
But I mean, if you look at it, that's what it all boils down to, right? I mean, behind a car, you have great power. As an airplane pilot or a passenger liner pilot, you've got great power and great responsibility. So with the internet, we have great power and great responsibility. Facebook has great power and great responsibility, or the lack thereof, right?
And now, well, listen, now starting to have the blowback from
But how many people have left?
We have to learn.
Not a lot. Yeah.
It's addictive. Absolutely.
You know, lessons
exactly that.
learned.
Well,
It's
it's
the
a-
same thing. We're going to learn from our mistakes. The key is to, I guess, learn from them and to understand that there will be a V1 of the OASIS, and there'll be a mistake, and then there'll be a V2, and that could be a mistake, and a V3, etc., etc.
Is there an argument for, because what the book isn't clear about is how the OASIS is monetized. And in fact, in the movie, there's the argument of the bad guys want to advertise the shit out of the OASIS. In fact, he says, you know, we've worked out we can occupy 80% of the view screen space with ads
Before you have a fit.
Yeah, before you have
exactly.
a fit and pass out. And it was a little bit sort of cheesy, stereotype, villain, bad thing. But right now, the tech businesses are the money model is advertising. Facebook, Google.
I don't know if the model is advertising as much anymore as it is data.
Well, how would that work? Because I think there's how does it become monetized in a way that isn't so it doesn't become corporate bullshit. I mean, one of the great things about social media was that it was people who were doing their thing with it. There wasn't a thought out business plan. At some point, Facebook had to go, okay, we've got to make money. Well, we've got a billion people with all their data.
And we know what Andrew does every day of the week, so let's sell this to someone.
Okay.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's exactly anything that you get for free, right? Maybe have a bit of a jaded view on it, but if you get it for free, you're the product.
No, we know that,
right?
and that absolutely.
And I think, but on the flip side of that, I quite like to get stuff that's relevant to me, right? I don't want to know about, I don't know, diapers, for example. I'm done with kids at the moment. So why want to send me adverts about diapers? You know.
But just okay, well, what are the possible models, I guess, is the question about. So let's have the OASIS, a global virtual reality world, which is enormous and fantastic and does incredible things. Are we just going to maybe we pay for it? I don't know. But then there's massive poor people who should be and who will gain benefit from it who couldn't.
So the one thing that I thought was very cool was the reference to the reason the world the way it was because of the global bandwidth riots.
Yeah.
And that was sort of like a turning point in society, right? That said they had to do something different because, well, not everybody had enough bandwidth. And I think the use of the concept of bandwidth is easy because there's so many other, possible things you could use, but they are all real, and maybe there's a step change that has to happen before you get to that kind of OASIS world, that says there needs some kind of social change that gets you to that point. I don't know.
Well, as rapid as it is also still gradual. I mean, it's not like we'll wake up tomorrow and hey, here's version 1 of the OASIS. It'll be a slow thing, and it's obviously going to start with gaming, and then of course porn and all of that, where they'll get the virtual reality right, and then so it starts to proliferate through the world. So I think in summary, I mean, from our read the book, listen to the book, watch the movie. It's a great story. But now, since we're here at a Stir Kennecore, and they've very graciously allowed us to sit in their Premier Lounge or Privé Lounge and record this, and there are now a few people, when I say a few, there's 12 people maybe, if I use a bit of imagination, that are kind of sitting around,
including us.
What do we do about the movie experience? We spoke about Netflix and how they made the series watching experience incredible. The whole Netflix and chill, and now you can watch movies at home or series. You can do whatever you want and do it at home and be comfortable. And the whole going out thing always seems to be a disappointment. You're disappointed either at the how complicated it was to pay, how much it was, and then the popcorn and Coke. I mean, it's now like a $600 experience if you got your husband and a wife and a kid. By the time you finish with the popcorn. And it just seems something's broken with the experience.
So Maciek and I spoke about this before with the release of the last Star Wars movie, because I go to watch Star Wars movies, and that's kind of it. I just don't go to the movies, right?
You're saving it for that special epic, and it's got to be worth. It's got to be an epic experience.
And the one point I made is that I no longer see the difference between a normal movie theater and IMAX. So what I mean by that is when IMAX first came out, the difference between what that IMAX experience was versus a normal theater was step change, right? And you could see the difference, you could feel the difference, you could hear the difference, you could use all of those sensory concepts. But now I don't see a significant enough difference between them to see the need to pay for the upgrade.
Okay.
And I think the movie experience needs to change. So going to the movies needs to be, or going to the theater needs to be more about the experience.
So what makes that?
Have you guys been to one of these 5D movies?
Or the 4DX thing.
Whatever it's called.
Is that where your seat moves and there's wind in your hair?
There's wind in your hair, there's smells, right?
Okay.
If there's a fire or something, they release like a fire smell. If they're in a forest, you get this fresh
I haven't experienced it.
So I watched one of the movies in it that it was a comedy, Hitman's Bodyguard.
Okay.
Which was a really fun movie because it didn't take itself too seriously, and some of the scenes were just fantastic. So it's 4 seats that are joined, and then they shake and move and stuff like that because everyone's got a speaker. And then there were car chases, and every time they went through a puddle, the thing in front of you would spray you with water.
Oh wow! Okay.
Absolutely.
And it I thoroughly enjoyed the movie. It was a great little escape. It was a big hoot, and it was expensive. It was more expensive than IMAX, but I'm still talking about it and saying,
Yes.
you know what, that was a great experience. It certainly enhanced the movie. Would I want to watch every movie like that? Difficult to say. I must be honest, because sometimes I even think 3D movies don't add that much. They annoy me a bit. Even at IMAX, I leaned over to talk to my wife for a second. Suddenly it becomes blurry because of the angle or
correct,
whatever,
yeah.
right? So I'm like, so then I have to sit there like like at attention, and so something is lost. Okay, can it get found again? I certainly hope so.
But for me, it's more in. I enjoy a movie when I sit there and watch it on the big screen. I enjoy. That's not the problem for me. For me, it's just that alone is not worth getting out of my house, brushing my teeth, putting on proper clothes, and taking the drive to go and see it. It's expensive. It's the same as watching a movie 40 years ago. But 40 years ago, it was a big deal because you didn't have options for entertainment.
You see, and I think
So it's expensive. It's I don't know.
It's clunky.
The culture of it. You don't feel like, whoa, I'm at the movies. It's like, ugh.
If you're a big movie fan, you probably have a pretty awesome theater room or cinema at home with a drop-down projector with some awesome sound. So you're under the shaking and vibrating seats, but you can put woofers under your seats and you can make them shake, right?
Absolutely.
And maybe you can get your kid to spray you with water. Okay? if you
Yeah, but it'll be all the time.
It'll be all the time. Yeah. So I'm in the same boat as you.
Yeah.
You know? I still want to get that experience and be wowed by it, but just going to the cinema, you're definitely not wowed anymore.
I think on that, for me, it's the distance between what you can get at home versus what you get in the experience. So if you think about it, when we were growing up as kids, right, go to the movies was killer. Why? Well, you could get popcorn at home. That was easy. But watching movies at home, right? Well, as a kid when I was little, we didn't have a VCR. So that was kind of part of the experience, though. Getting a VCR, coming home, having to spend half an hour to get the thing to work, plugging it in. Then the guy didn't rewind the tapes. You got to rewind the tape. Right, you with
Remember
me?
that, eh? Please
Exactly.
rewind
Please
all the
rewind the
stickers.
tape. Kind people rewind tapes, right? But just that whole sort of or even just watching TV, right, was a small screen experience. Literally a small screen experience. Now, you can argue like, is the whatever, I don't know how many inches a Stereochemical screen is compared to the 40 inches you have at home, or the 42 or the 55 or the 60, right? But I don't
3D.
think exactly.
And 3D.
I don't think the experience is enough of a step change.
No, it's
anymore.
not. That's
And I think
exactly
that's
it.
why it's kind of
And
like,
also
it's
on
like I'll just
demand,
watch it at home.
right? On demand.
I'm gonna watch it when I want to watch
Like I mean, remember Friday releases were like, if you didn't book or if you're not there early, forget about it, right? I mean, now it's, are we going to watch this movie this weekend? Yeah. Are we going to book? Why? Where are we going to watch? I don't know. We could watch it in any cinema, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
So essentially, it is something that's ripe for disruption. Something's got to change about it, because I just get the idea, like, as attendance declines, they just charge more money rather than something must change. And there are ideas like having the football on. Let's make an event at a theatre on a Tuesday night. Have 4 screens, 4 cinemas dedicated to the football, and you can do a whole event around that. Someone else had an idea about e-gaming. Gaming is huge. So you get champion gamers go and watch a World of Warcraft or Rocket League for me one day, maybe. Go watch it. Go watch the big players play. I think
Imagine
it'd be an
watching a
incredible
Formula One
experience.
race in a movie theater with that sound, right? I think that could be quite incredible.
it's goosebump stuff.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you're really going to hear it. You're really going to see it. It's immersive, and I think they need to think about the way some of the tech changes. So I've often wondered, why doesn't the screen wrap around onto the roof? Why don't? I'm saying it's a box. You're sitting in a box, right? Essentially, a movie theater is a box. So why must the screen only be on the far wall? Why isn't it?
No, fair enough.
Just that gets you a step closer to that sort of completely.
Well, I guess the answer lies in the OASIS, right?
Yeah,
Imagine
but
if that's what you're going to the movie experience is.
Well, listen,
you
if
come
we-
here, you plug in, and now you're like in the movie. Kind of
Well,
like he was
yeah.
when he was going through
Is that version 1
War
of the
games
Oasis?
and
And maybe it is, and you know what? If it does come to pass, that's pretty much the end of the movie theater as we understand it, right?
Completely.
Because it becomes a whole different thing. All right, gentlemen, I think there we need to wrap it up. So, in summary, it's an outstanding book.
Yes.
A great story. It's, I guess, a little bit of science fiction. It's fantasy, but it's also fairly real. I mean, the stuff in the book, it's not beyond the imagination. It's
Nowhere.
just close enough to be tantalizing.
Just over the horizon.
So
Absolutely.
download the book, read it, or listen to it. But first, go and watch the movie. I think you will thoroughly enjoy the movie if you watch it and then read the book. I think that's a great way to go about it. And then somehow the movie experience has got to change. So,
Or not
to
watch the movie and just read and listen to it. Either way. But
Yeah.
yes.
So I'd like to thank my two highly qualified friends with whom I play poker, who agreed to take some time out of their lives to come and talk shit about all of this. So thank you very much,
Thank you.
Andrew and Maciek.
Ryan.
Thank you very much. And this has been an interesting episode, I think, of The New Normal with Ryan Hogarth. And listen, I'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, tweet me, do something to get in touch if you have ideas about what I should be talking about, stories that should be being told.